CMA and CA final students, analyze the problems, and develop the analytical skill on strategic financial management in online class with Dr. Subrata Mukherjee.
Today, I will discuss a problem on interest swap. United Bankers Limited offered the following interest rates to two of its customers for a loan of rupees 100 crores, repayable in 7 years. Company Somnath Limited and Amal IT Services Limited. Nature of activity: supply and installation of security systems for home, office, corporate surveillance, and other security services and products. Providing IT support to various airlines, shipping companies, and government companies. Years in industry: 25 and 1.5. Market position: market leaders and market entrants or infant. Rating by UBL: A double plus and B plus. Floating interest rate: MIBOR minus 0.5% and MIBOR plus 1%. Fixed rate interest rate: fixed interest rate is 10% and 12.5%. Share in the net gain on account of interest rate swap: 60% and 40%. Assuming principal amount is repaid at the end of the 7 years, what is the effective gain in percentage as well as in value for both the companies if they enter into a swap arrangement for reducing interest effect? Also ascertain the net interest cost in percent for both the companies. So you have two companies. One is Somnath Limited and the other is Amal IT Services Limited. So rate of interest available. So fixed interest rate that is available to Somnath Limited is 10% and Amal IT Services Limited is 12.5%. And floating interest rate available to Somnath Limited is MIBOR minus 0.5% and the floating interest rate available to Amal IT Services Limited is MIBOR plus 1%. So we can clearly say that Somnath Limited is having a more creditworthiness in comparison to Amal IT Services Limited. And it is obvious because Somnath Limited is in existence for 25 years, whereas Amal IT Services is doing business for just 1.5 years. So in any problem of swap, so you have to find out which company is dominating the other in terms of rate of interest. And obviously, the interest is charged to a more creditworthiness company in comparison to a company which is a new entrant in the industry. So I'm writing this sentence so it will be clear to you for understanding. So as creditworthiness of Somnath Limited is more than Amal IT Services Limited, it will decide the type of interest it will pay. So which interest, whether it will be a fixed interest or whether it will be a floating interest, that Somnath will decide. Somnath Limited will decide. So let us find out. So difference in fixed rate of interest is 2.5%. So how I arrived at this figure? 12.5% minus 10%. So this is 2.5%. And difference in floating rate of interest is 1.5%. However, I arrived at 1.5 because MIBOR plus 1%, this is the rate of interest charged to Amal, and minus, so this I kept in bracket, minus MIBOR plus 0.5%. So MIBOR will cancel out, and this minus 1, and here I have written plus 0.5 or minus 0.5. So 1.5%. So 1 plus 0.5 is 1.5%. So what is the spread? So spread is the difference in the fixed rate of interest, that is 2.5%, minus the difference in the floating rate of interest, that is 1.5%. So this is 1%, and this will be the net gain from swap. Now we will find out how the net gain from swap will be 1%. Now the fixed rate of interest, the difference in fixed rate of interest is 2.5%. So Somnath Limited will borrow from its lender at a fixed rate of interest because that will be more beneficial to Somnath Limited. So let me present a diagram which is very important when you are solving a problem on swap, interest swap specifically. So Somnath Limited will prefer to borrow at fixed rate and will enter with Amal IT Services Limited in swap arrangement or agreement. So this is the picture. So there are two companies. One is Somnath Limited. This diagram is very important, and I will request the student to try to understand this diagram that I am doing here. So here is the Amal IT Services Limited. Now there is a lender for Somnath Limited and there is a lender for Amal IT Services Limited. So Somnath will pay, or rather Somnath will lend at a fixed rate of interest. So this is fixed rate of interest, and the fixed rate of interest that is payable by Somnath Limited is 10%. So this is Somnath Limited. So this is the 10% which is available, and it is given in the question. So you can see that the fixed rate of interest available to Somnath Limited is 10%. And the floating rate of interest that is available to Amal IT Services Limited, this is floating rate of interest that is available to Amal IT Services is MIBOR plus 1%. So Amal Limited has to pay to its lender at a floating rate of interest at MIBOR plus 1%. Now Amal and Somnath Limited. So these two company enters into a swap agreement. So since Somnath Limited is paying at a fixed rate of interest to its lender, so Somnath will pay at a floating rate of interest to Amal IT Services Limited, and this will be MIBOR minus 0.5%. So the floating rate that is available to Somnath Limited, this rate of interest will be paid by Somnath Limited to Amal IT Services Limited at MIBOR minus 0.5%. And there will be no change or exchange of principal among or between these two companies, that is the Somnath Limited and Amal IT Services Limited. There will be no exchange of principal amount. So they will convert their fixed rate of interest loan to a floating rate of interest loan. That is, the Somnath Limited will be able to convert the fixed rate of interest loan to floating rate of interest loan, and so the Amal IT Services Limited, that the original loan taken by Amal IT Services Limited is in floating rate of interest. So it will convert into fixed rate. So Amal Limited, IT Services Limited will pay at a fixed rate to Somnath Limited at 12.5%. So this is the rate that is available to Amal IT Services Limited. So it is there in the question as well as in my presentation. So fixed rate that is available to Somnath Limited is 10%, and the fixed rate that Amal Services IT Services Limited will pay is 12.5%. This one. And the floating rate of interest available to Somnath Limited is MIBOR minus 0.5%, and the floating rate of interest available to Amal IT Services Limited is MIBOR plus 1%. So this pictorial diagram is very important when you are solving a problem on interest swap. So once you prepare this pictorial diagram, then it will be a cakewalk, or it will be very easy to solve. Now, the final picture that I will present before you. So I have already told you or explained how the two companies will enter into interest swap agreement. So here the Somnath Limited and Amal IT Services Limited. So Somnath Limited has taken a loan or borrows at an interest of 10%, and Amal IT Services Limited has borrowed at a floating rate of interest of MIBOR plus 1%. So these two companies enter into an interest swap. So on interest swap, so Somnath Limited will receive from other party. So Somnath Limited will get at 12.5%. So I'm keeping it within bracket. And Amal IT Services Limited will get from Somnath Limited at MIBOR minus 0.5%. So Somnath Limited will pay to Amal IT Services Limited at MIBOR minus 0.5%, and Amal IT Services Limited will pay to Somnath Limited at 12.5%. So this is the on interest swap receives from the other party and pays to the other party. So this is MIBOR, so minus 0.5%, and this will be 12.5%. So Somnath Limited is going to pay at MIBOR minus 0.5% and Amal IT Services is going to pay at 12.5%. So what is the net interest cost? So this is the net interest cost. So this will be MIBOR minus 3%. So you just calculate 10% and here it is minus 12.5 and again minus 0.5. So this will be minus 3 and MIBOR. So MIBOR minus 3%. And here the minus MIBOR and MIBOR will cancel out. So this will be plus 0.5% and or minus 0.5 and this is 1%. So altogether this will be 14%. Okay, because this is minus, so it is kept within bracket. So minus MIBOR plus 0.5 minus MIBOR plus 0.5. So 0.5 plus 1 plus 12.5 is 14%. So this is the net interest cost. So the interest that is available is MIBOR minus 0.5 to Somnath Limited, and the interest that is available to Amal IT Services is 12.5. So he has to pay extra of 1.5 per 5%. So MIBOR minus 3% and 14% is the net interest cost. So what is the saving? So there is a saving for Somnath Limited of 2.5% because the rate of interest which is available to Somnath Limited is MIBOR minus 0.5 and the net interest which is available or with the net interest cost available to Somnath Limited is MIBOR minus 3%. So if you compare these two rates, if you just compare these two rates, the difference is 2.5%, and if you compare these two rates, the difference is 1.5%. So this is basically a loss. So there is a loss of 1.5% to Amal IT Services Limited, and there is a gain of 2.5% to Somnath Limited. So overall saving is 1%. So difference of 2.5% and 1.5%. So this 1%, which is the overall saving between Somnath Limited and Amal IT Services Limited, they will share this overall saving of 1%. So this is the rate of saving of 1%. So what is the amount saved is equal to 1% into loan of 100 crore into 7 years. So this will be rupees 7 crore. So total amount saved over 7 years will be rupees 7 crore. So this amount of 7 crore will be shared between Somnath Limited and Amal IT Services Limited in a ratio of 60:40, which is given in the question. So shared by Somnath Limited will be equal to rupees 7 crore into 60%. So this will be rupees 4.2 crore, and shared by Amal IT Services Limited is equal to rupees 7 crore into 40%. So this will be rupees 2.8 crore. Thanks for watching the video. If you like the channel, then subscribe the channel to get regular updates